Your commencement speaker today is Dr. Richard Veith, Western Washington University class of 1969. Richard Veith is a physician, psychiatrist, administrator, and professor at the University of Washington School of Medicine. There he is the Chief of Psychiatric Services at the UW Medical Center, an adjunct professor of global health in the School of Public Health, and the Richard D. and Bernice E. Tutt Professor in the Neurosciences. He was a longtime chair of the UW Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences and served as director of the Geriatric Research Education and Clinical Center for the Seattle VA Puget Sound Healthcare System. He also serves as the national chair of the Department of Veterans Affairs Geriatrics and Gerontology Advisory Committee. Dr. Veith has published extensively on the treatment of depression in patients with heart disease and stroke. He is also active in telemedicine, helping to lead a 4-year grant to improve the delivery of mental health care and pain management services in rural Washington clinics. Dr. Veith travels regularly to Vietnam and Cambodia, working with medical schools and health ministries to address a tragic shortage of psychiatric and mental health care in those countries. Dr. Veith, whose grandfather was a physician in Yakima, knew he wanted to be a doctor when he came to Western and received a solid start in science and psychology. The rest of his medical training was at the UW, but he remains close to Western. He's one of 11 WWU alums in his family, which received Western's Alumni Association Legacy Family Award in 2015. He and his siblings established the Barbara Ellen McGuire Scholarship in honor of their 91-year-old mother. That scholarship supports students planning careers in healthcare, neurosciences, or information technology. Dr. Veith is a member of the College of the Humanities and Social Sciences Advancement Council and also advises Western students interested in medical careers. Please join me in welcoming a distinguished graduate and friend of Western Washington University, Dr. Richard Veith.
Well, good afternoon. You're looking pretty happy, as you should be. I want to thank President Shepard, the trustees, and the faculty, and you graduates and the families for allowing me the honor of being here today. I also want to thank Jenna Cowan for her very thoughtful, inspiring comments that rang true for me, having been here in the 60s, and is a nice, I think, segue into what I'm hoping to try to provide for you as a little bit of a glimpse of how do you go forward when things look so uncertain. And I'm really impressed as I've listened to her and gotten more familiar with what's been going here lately, how many similarities there are between your generation here in school and some of the social changes that we're encountering and those that my generation encountered in the 1960s. So I'm hoping to draw some parallels there, and you let me know how I do. But I want to join President Shepard and the others in first congratulating all the parents and the family members and the siblings for all your support and encouragement, and I suspect in a few cases some merciless hounding to get your training done so you get done here and be here today. So thank you all very much. I'm fond of saying I'm a highly trained professional, so I know I'm between you and a big party, and so I'm going to be short and brief. But let me start by asking, how many of you read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? Any hands? A few. That's good. I want to suggest that now that you don't have any homework on Monday, that you've got some time, especially since you're not sure what your future is going to be, to read this book. There are some really intriguing things, I think, for everybody in it. And what you're going to learn, and this is maybe the first guidepost, is it isn't just the best and the brightest who kind of manage to get up to the top and make these incredible life achievements, but in fact, there's a unique interaction of time and place, coupled with opportunity and talent and a lot of hard work. It turns out to be like 10,000 hours of practice, and you can become a world-class expert in just about anything. This formula explains why the very best baseball, hockey, and soccer players are born in January and February. Interesting. It explains why the Beatles were successful. That's the 10,000 hours part. And why Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were able to transform computing, which used to be mainframe, to personal computers. I encourage you to read this because right now is a good time for you to do that. This is a special time and an opportunity for you at this precise moment in your life journey. And it's important to be in the right place at the right time, not just to be smart and hardworking and brilliant, but to be in the right place at the right time. And this is your place, and this is your time, and both Jenna and I at least want to seize that moment. I want to thank her for that again. So yes, it is uncertain. It is perhaps for some of you like jumping off the cliff without a parachute. But trust me, for those of us who've been around longer, you can manage this. And in fact, it can be very exciting, even if it's uncertain. The next 10 years, I would argue, will be the most important in determining what your future will be and what your direction will be. You'll need to make these discoveries on your own, but I've been around a while. I'm going to try to offer you some advice and suggestions that I hope you'll find helpful. So first of all, never give up on your personal aspirations and maintain a sense of perspective, a mindfulness in your place in time. And you'll hear me coming back to that theme repeatedly. I graduated, as you heard from Western, in psychology and chemistry in 1969, almost 50 years ago, which is a little alarming to acknowledge. And where's my walker when I really need it? I told somebody, I went to my annual physical last week, and the form had, what are your goals today? And my goal was no new diagnoses, so it gives you an idea. But I have spent a career as a geriatric psychiatrist, and I worked as a director of a research center in Alzheimer's disease and did a lot of work with aging people. And in the clinical area, I've spent a lot of time talking to people who are older about their life narratives and the things that have worked and sometimes the things that don't work. So I have a lot of perspective on life, and I think that's probably the most important thing I can offer you, especially, as Jenna said, at this launching off point. You know, at least I could offer you some perspectives that might be useful and informative, because you don't know how to look at that yet. So, first of all, today's milestone is incredibly important and wonderful. It's a wonderful achievement. But even more wonderful, I would argue, is what it says about you at this point in time and in the narrative of your now still emerging and unfolding life. Yes, indeed, your degree will open doors that might not otherwise have been open for you. But what's really important, I would argue, is it talks to your ability to focus, to work hard, to persevere, and to exercise discipline. And it's these attributes that are really going to determine your success and your happiness in life, I would argue. So let me give you a case example, yours truly. It might not be obvious from that wonderful bio sketch that President Shepard just gave you, but I'll bet my experience here at Western was not too different from many of yours. I attended Western, as you know, in the late 60s, a very turbulent time in the United States. Like now, we had a period of intense social change. There was a protracted and prolonged war that was pretty threatening and disruptive, and there was a lot of other cultural disruption going on. Personally, it was very hard for me to get to college and to pay for college because there were events going on in my personal life that really began to threaten my ability to be successful and to realize some of the dreams that you've heard about. My identity was to be a physician, and it's pretty clear to me where that came from. It came from my grandfather, who was an early Yakima physician 100 years ago. Actually, he graduated in 1913. I grew up hearing stories from my mother and my aunts and uncles about him snowshoeing into the reservations in the deep of winter to care for poor people, being paid with chickens and dogs and other sorts of things. A very inspiring kind of story. And I learned that when he died relatively young of asthma, they said because of stress and fatigue in his early 50s, that two native Yakima chiefs in their full headdresses came to his funeral. So those are pretty powerful stories, and of course inspired several of my family to think about a medical career. But at that time, in 1969, my dreams were in pretty serious jeopardy. Unlike you, I did not attend my graduation in 1969. That's right. This is my first commencement exercise at Western. And you might ask why. Well, I'll give you an explanation. So here's a short version. I'm the second of 8 children of what would be considered a classic Irish Catholic family in the 50s and the 60s. Our self-view was we were bright, handsome, successful athletes and a wonderfully close family, but that was pretty roundly shattered by the experience that essentially my father abandoned us when I was 15. We lived in Bellevue. He moved to Mercer Island, but we didn't see him for 3 years, and very few times thereafter through the rest of his life. So we essentially were on our own. My mother, as you've heard, we set up an endowment here for her, was a homemaker. She had 8 kids, ranging from my older brother at 16 to my youngest brother at 6 months. And we were pretty much on our own to figure out what was going to happen. We had a good foundation of expectations and having done pretty well in school at that time, and expectations of future success and work and education. But we didn't know how we were going to do that, how we were going to pay for it. We put ourselves through school, for example. Now, granted, we were not homeless, we were not destitute, but it was a very precarious and a pretty stressful time, and that lasted for several years. That was my first lesson in resiliency. But as they say, if stress doesn't kill you, it's going to make you stronger. My second big lesson in resiliency happened just about the time for you that you're about to graduate. In about May of 1969, I was about to graduate. I just had received the last letter rejecting me from my application to medical school. So you can imagine what that was like. I was pretty crestfallen, I was adrift, I was uncertain, and pretty badly hurt. And as you know, as a consequence, I didn't go to my own graduation. So if you think about it for a second, and certainly the parents in the audience, the older parents at least, will understand, 1969 was not a good time not to be in college. There was a draft on. Most of the men in my cohort were pretty worried about that because there were pretty scary things happening over there. So to avoid being drafted and hope to maybe get back into applying to medical school, I joined the Marine Reserves, one of the last people who was able to do that. They sent me to San Diego, where I had boot camp. I was the one college graduate of 400 recruits who arrived that week, most of whom had come from inner cities, very different kind of backgrounds and very disadvantaged backgrounds. So it was a real cultural immersion for me. Luckily, I was a swimmer here at Western and was pretty fast and running and smart enough since I graduated that I got through it and actually did pretty well in the Marines. The day after I was done with my 6 months of active duty, I was interviewed for medical school at the University of Washington, and I was actually accepted that day on the spot, which is very unusual, and even now highly unusual. It never happens. But as I think back about it, and I've interviewed a lot of people myself who've been applying to medical school and graduate school, well, of course, here was this young kid who had good aspirations and worked hard and put himself through school and even had to join the Marines to get to medical school. So compared, at least I thought, to the smart alecks from Yale and Harvard who were applying, oh, did I say that? Yes. No hard feelings, but they were a bit more privileged than I was. They wanted to reward me for that dedication and perseverance and vision. And that's probably, I want to emphasize that for you. So I did survive that uncertainty and that turmoil, and had many years later of ongoing work to get to finish my training. I had what most people would consider a highly successful academic career. But my grandfather, I believe, would be most proud of the fact that I and several of my family have not lost sight of the fact that what's important is giving back to your community and caring for your family in the broadest sense, and caring for those who are less fortunate. I stepped down, as you heard, as chair of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Washington, a big department, about 350 faculty, about a year ago. I'm now focusing on global health and global mental health. My own next 10 years will be focused on efforts to improve training and access to mental health care in Vietnam and Cambodia, and maybe Laos, where mental health is really terribly stigmatized and there's really virtually no treatment available, especially in Cambodia. My brother Rob, who's an orthopedic surgeon who also spent time here at Western, has been visiting Vietnam twice a year. He's a foot and ankle surgeon, and they identify poor people, usually Hill tribe, Hmong tribes, and others. So if you're over there, if you're born with club feet, you spend your life walking on the top of your feet. So they're going over there and they're identifying these young people, sometimes babies, sometimes young adults, and fixing them, so at least they're walking on the bottoms of their feet. It's pretty transformative and remarkably amazing and highly gratifying for him and pretty inspiring for us as well. There's essentially no functional healthcare system in Cambodia. And of course, the least prepared, the most deprived patients are those with mental illness. And as you can imagine, Cambodia is still reverberating socially from the aftermath of the Pol Pot regime in the late 1970s. In that 5-year period, they killed all the doctors, they killed all the judges, they killed all the professors, they killed all the intellectual elite and artists, and they took all the rest of the population who were in their few big cities and drove them out into the fields, into the killing fields, and during that period of time, a fifth of the population died. So you can imagine the echo effects, generational effects that's still happening in Cambodia. I learned in my first visit last year that there are mentally disturbed patients who are so difficult for their communities to handle that they're actually chained to the ground in huts beneath the village houses. I knew those things sort of happened in some places in Africa, and you may have seen the New York Times article a few weeks ago about that. But I was appalled to know that in a city as big as Phnom Penh and as international, 90 minutes away, 90 miles away or so, we have these kind of circumstances. And that's just, I think, appalling and a moral imperative for me and us who have an opportunity to try to help there to work. And that's what I'll be doing. So, what's my takeaway message for you and your critical next 10 years? I've just described mine. Here are some suggestions. I hope they are helpful, and I think they actually complement the nice charge to action that you just got from Jenna. First of all, be mindful. Enjoy the moment. Right now, for example, really celebrate this wonderful achievement, but also never give up on your dreams. Don't get anxious about the uncertainty. Just never give up. Trust your instincts and keep moving forward. Stay focused and passionate about life and your dreams, and just never give up on them. Develop resilience. Life can be hard, and actually, unfortunately, it can be unfair. There are certainly much worse stories than my story. I tell our trainees at Harborview, where we have 67 inpatient psychiatric beds for the acute and chronically ill, that when we're caring for troubled people from broken families who've been often abused or neglected or discarded by society, the only difference from us is the family that they were born into, and that's through no fault of their own. So it's very important to remember how fortunate in many ways we are and how unfortunate the lives are of so many other people around us. Cultivate calmness in your life as much as you can. In the rush to succeed and find your way and be successful and acquire things, be careful, be thoughtful and deliberate in both your words and your actions. I tell my trainees, we don't want to be living the Jerry Springer show. You really want to have a much more thoughtful, careful life. Those of you who, like me, have been blessed to live here in the Northwest know that nature is a great source of calmness, so take advantage of it, but also take care of our world. Focus on having love in your life. Learn to take care of yourself. Also take care of your loved ones and others around you. Be a great son, a great daughter, a great wife, a great mother, a great friend, and a great partner. How you live out these roles in your life will provide a true sense of self-worth and meaning in life. Try to grow personally from exploring and understanding the perspectives of others. In your family, in your community, in your campus community, and in the world. Immerse yourself in other backgrounds, and if you have a chance, and when you have a chance, try to see the world and truly learn to respect and develop empathy for others by listening and understanding their perspectives. It's by this example that you can foster peace in the community, on the campus, in the world, and peace within yourself. It's extremely important. Give back to your community, your university, and those who follow in your footsteps, hopefully as I am doing today. We're really nothing without each other to tackle these problems together. And above all, maintain honesty and integrity. At the end of the day, this will define your character, your reputation, and your legacy. So my generation took great pride in challenging the status quo, questioning conventional authority, promoting societal change. But as we all know, and maybe now particularly compared to the last couple of decades, I'm impressed actually, there's a great need to create a safer, more enlightened, and more just world, as has been apparent recently here and anytime you turn on the news. There are, in fact, incredible opportunities for you and your generation. It may seem uncertain, but this wonderful university has equipped you and prepared you partly by reinforcing your assets, but also providing you tools and education that will allow you to move forward if you remain cognizant of your place in time and the unique opportunity that creates for you. to make a change as you move forward. We really need you to be successful now more than ever, but I have confidence that you will be successful and wish you every happiness and success in doing so. And I want to especially thank you for letting me graduate with you here at Western Washington today. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.